Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bryce Wilson. Joining me here is Austin Snyder. Austin, why don't you say hello?
What's up, everybody? My name is Austin Snyder. I am thrilled to be here talking dragons with one of my oldest and dearest friends.
Yeah.
What are we doing here, Bryce?
Austin, we're doing what we did all our childhood, and we're talking dragons and movies, dragon movies.
All the best podcasts, as they are, we're just taking something that was already happening and putting it on mic.
Exactly. Not only already happening, but already happening for years. We both have an affinity and love for dragons.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get this right out of the way. I'll get this out of the way right off the bat. We both love dragons. I think a dragon is the coolest possible creature that could show up in any movie, any story, except for maybe a demon, but that's like a personal thing. I digress. So I'm with you there, but I'll admit it right off the bat that you are an even bigger dragon fan than I.
I feel like that's very fair to say. I do love dragons. They are, like you said, they are the coolest coolest dragons. They're the coolest creatures. What's cooler than a massive lizard that can fly, breathe fire? In some cultures, it's considered to be the ruler of the sky and the earth. What's cooler than that?
I got nothing.
Well, I mean, for me also, and I mean, as you know, growing up, I was a dinosaur kid. Like, I love dinosaurs.
The dinosaur kid to dragon adult pipeline.
It's a very dangerous pipeline that's going on in society today. But I do think that, I mean, you always see the memes flying around that kids are either interested in one of three things. And for me, dinosaurs were definitely that. I read all the books I could get my hands on. I watched all the little kid movies that were I was probably not supposed to be watching Jurassic Park as young as I was. Like,
how young were you when you saw Jurassic Park?
I know I distinctly remember when Jurassic Park 3 came out. I was watching that. I don't recall what year that came out, but I know I was living in.
I'm pulling it up. Jurassic P3.
I think it was before we met. Because I think I was living in Washington, but before I lived in the Valley.
Yeah, 2001. So it would have been a little before. So you were 6?
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to say that's actually about right. That movie gets a little wacky.
Some might think it's a little intense for 6-year-olds, but as somebody who is reading dinosaur books as often as I was, I think that it's a perfect fit.
Funny that you should mention seeing Jurassic Park 3 so young. According to my parents, Jurassic Park 2 is the first movie they took me to. So that, I've been told, was the first movie that I saw in theaters, which, when would Jurassic Park 2 have, or I guess The Lost World? 97. So it came out. So it came out the year I was born. So that's in like the grace period where I'm sure they're like, he's not registering any of this.
They brought you with the earphones and everything.
No. That's the 90s were still a little lax. I think by today's standards.
They were wild back then.
But anyway, I was not necessarily a dinosaur kid. I think my appreciation for the dragons more came just from the dragons themselves. I was definitely a Land Before Time kid.
Yeah. Land Before Time, I mean, I definitely watched the first one several times over.
I have probably seen the first 10 movies at least. I'm going to say I've seen each one at least 6 times, some of them many more than that.
Oh, yes. I mean, the one that has Chomper when he first gets introduced, I know I've seen.
Well, yeah, that's Land Before Time 2, and then I believe he comes back for Land Before Time 5.
I know he does make a comeback, and I was really thrown off when he started talking.
But they also, yeah, because those movies are like so, like they start out pretty dark and like serious and
for kid movies.
Yeah, but that first one especially. Petrie, the flyer who can't fly.
Yeah.
Or like Sarah, who's like can't admit that she needs help from anyone in her life. like some real issues in there, and then it just turns into like musical, like big, 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 big water. Gotta cross the big, big. Yeah.
I mean, I love it all. Like,
yeah. So, but that's Chomper. In the second one, he doesn't talk.
No.
And in the fifth one, he talks, but he looks the same. It's like he
Exactly.
hasn't grown up at all, but somehow he has gone from no vocab to full vocab.
Yes.
I guess they gave him 3 movies. We are so off track already.
We should really start the podcast.
Okay, well, I think what we're getting to, so that's the origin of your interest in dragons. But I think that I fully came to understand your love of dragons and the magnitude of it when we were roommates in college.
Correct.
And so I'm a big film nerd. That's a big part of my life. I do video work professionally. I got a degree in film. I love all of it. But even back then, we both love movies enough that dominated a lot of our conversation. And as tends to happen in college, there's a lot of like self-important conversations like, dude, what are your 10 out of 10 movies? Yeah. What makes a movie a 10 out of 10 for you? And you had one particular very specific criteria. Would you care to share that?
It had to have a dragon one way or another, whether it was, even if it was just a statue of a dragon, it had to have a dragon. It had to give homage to the most powerful creature thought of.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I know that dragon movies get a bad rap sometimes for good reason, but
we'll get into it. That's what we're here for.
But I also like I think it's fair to say, Austin, the love that you have for movies can only be matched for my love of dragons.
Exactly. And thus a podcast is born. I do want to ask, do you still hold this standard that a movie can only be a 10 out of 10 if it has a dragon?
I will put this little asterisk in. I'm way more into the TV universe. I know we've had this conversation. I get into watching TV shows like There's No Tomorrow. And for me, a TV show can definitely not be a 10 out of 10 without a dragon.
Fair.
As far as movies, I just don't believe there's any 10 out of 10s that are coming out anymore. So.
Oh! Okay.
So the short answer is yes. I still hold that criteria to a standard.
Good to know. Good to know. And I think that's good for our audience to know.
Yeah.
Just as we're getting started here. But the good news is everything we're going to discuss on this pod is on the table as a potential 10 out of 10, if that is Bryce's criteria.
Exactly. It's all there.
So I do think that's worth underlining, though. Part of the reason I think that we are a perfect duo for this undertaking is that, first, you are more of a TV guy.
Yeah.
I'm more of a movie guy.
Yeah.
Not that we don't both dabble in both.
Of course.
But, I mean, that's an aspect to it. I think you're more of a casual movie fan. Like, you like film, but you're coming at it from more of, like, a general perspective.
Yeah, when it comes to movies, I can definitely say that it has to have something that really is drawing me in.
Yeah.
While on the other hand, how many movies have you? I've probably seen. Well, I mean, it is 2024. I've probably only seen 2 movies in the theater.
See, here's the difference between you and me, Bryce. I can tell you exactly how many movies I have seen this year. I'm just pulling up my handy dandy Letterboxd. Okay, so this year in total watches, new to me and rewatches, I have seen 25 movies. We are a little over halfway through February, and of those, 2 of those have been in theaters. Okay, so I've only been out to the cinema twice this year.
Okay,
but I'm getting a few more hours in than you on that front.
But on the flip side, if I asked you how many TV shows that you have watched this year.
Oh. I was watching some anime. I
Yeah.
watched a season of My Hero Academia.
I mean, a season, that's cute.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure I've watched at least, well, I mean, yeah, I've seen at least 5 shows since the
Damn.
start of the year. And I'm not saying like that I'm watching 5 shows, but like I've watched them through. But again, I think that just really just highlights the difference. For me, I know that you have very much an appreciation for the art of film, you might say.
Indeed.
And I think for me, when it comes to TV shows, I like there being more lore heavy. I like having a lot more of that background world that you just don't have the time. Like, you can definitely have the time and you can have the grace to add that into a movie and it can be well done. But I feel like in TV shows, it gives it a lot more of a platform to really build that up and give something juicy to bite into, you might say.
That's a really good perspective. And I think you're totally right. I think that's the main thing that draws you to long form anime.
Yes.
Is there's so much potential for lore because it's just like awesome action sequences and then characters like monologuing and saying exactly what's happening.
Exactly. No,
Which I love anime too. Like I just want to get that. Like I'm not a big anime person, but I totally respect it. I partake as well.
we'll break it down.
Yeah, that's coming up as well. So that's a difference in the two of us.
Yeah.
What else? Why are we the right men for this job?
I mean, we both have very much an appreciation for the genre of fantasy. We're both avid players of fantasy-based games, whether it is tabletop or video game focus. We both really much loved the Legend of Zelda games that have been coming out recently. We loved
Excellent.
Elden Ring, which still chugging our way through there. And then obviously Dungeons and Dragons is pretty big. We've been playing that for years now. How long have we been playing? Like
2017?
2017?
I want to say.
So 7 years, like that's
Pretty consistently. Yeah.
pretty consistent. I mean, the longest we probably went without playing was like 3 months, but still, like, we're getting at least a session in a month every so often.
This is great for our nerd cred.
We're just trying to make sure that that gets laminated out. You asked for what our credentials are, Austin. I'm providing the credentials that are approved by the council over here.
Excellent. It is indeed what we are trying to do here. And speaking of D&D, that is the idea of this podcast, which I will lay out now that we are 15 minutes into the record. In D&D, the best campaigns that we've been a part of always have a session 0, if you will. That is a sort of table setting where we can just talk frankly about what we're trying to do, what the plan is, and just get the whole pod ready to go.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing here, and I mean we've already kind of outlined it, but
Yeah.
Dragon movie podcast.
Yeah. And a lot of these movies are going to be brand new to us. You're going to get us having a fresh take on it, very virgin eyes, you might say, seeing these films. But with full transparency, we're going to be watching films and TV shows that we've already seen, but are coming in more with, don't want to say a critical eye, but just we're going to be breaking down what's going to be going on in these films.
That'll always be apparent. We'll set the table again for each individual film that we're discussing. On that point, though, the very beginning, our first 10 episodes that we have planned will be discussing HBO's House of the Dragon.
Correct.
Which is a show that has been out for a while, the first season at least.
Yeah. And we've both seen it. However, we haven't watched it together. And I think that's another part that I think is really being emphasized with this podcast is when we did live together, there were several movies, several TV shows. And we still do try to make an effort to watch a show or watch a movie together in general, but it was a lot easier to do when we were living together in college. And I think this is another way that we're just trying to continue having that. Because we would always have that bro talk, you might say, breaking down the movie right after we watched it, or we'd give ourselves 15 minutes and then break it down. So we're just doing that in front of a tapestry that has a tree on it now.
Yeah, and we got our Dragon Boys.
Oh, we got the boys here.
I don't know if this video will actually get released or if this will just be released in audio form, but Trust us, we have the fixins, the setup.
We got the
Anyway,
cred. But yeah, we'll make sure to let everybody know going into it that if it's a movie that we saw prior towards it, because I do think that there's a lot more of a critic's eye that we can go in with a rewatch rather than just going in with the first watch of a movie, but we'll still give it our all with each one of the films.
yes. And to be clear, it's our intention to catch up with the show House of the Dragon and then stay current with it from there.
Correct. Once the show breaks down, we're planning on not only watching the show to give our breakdown of it, but we're also planning on reacting to it, getting what it is, with full transparency as well. I have read A Song of Ice and Fire books, but I have not read the books that this show is based off of. So I'm going in with only what I've read in the books or heard in the TV show Game of Thrones, while Austin has only seen the show A Game of Thrones.
Twice.
Twice.
Again, get the nerd cred.
Only twice. Yeah, I've only seen it twice.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, along those lines, like we're going to be going in, we're going to be reacting, but we're also not having the information. I've specifically avoided this book because I want to enjoy the show first and getting that. I know I will. Don't you worry, all those book readers. I will read the book once the show is complete. You can at me all you want. I'm not changing that.
And I will probably leave that responsibility to you. I will make no such promises. Maybe if they ever finish the core Song of Ice and Fire, I might give it a go.
George, that's at you.
Don't finish it, dude. Just hold your ground. I respect it at this point. It's come all the way back around, and I think that I'm not sure if this is the pod for me to...
Austin, we will have an army at this doorstep protesting us if you go too much further with this.
Okay, all I'm going to say is I don't think that there's anything he could do to make people happy at this point. So I sympathize with him to some degree.
I'll do a little pushback. I don't think that there's anything he can do to make the show watchers happy. I still think a lot of the people that are the book readers, I'm sure he can still make them happy because I know I'm really original. I really enjoy the books more than I enjoy the show, especially once you get into the later books in the show. Just the character development that you see, it actually makes sense rather than completely.
Save it. We might cover that one too.
I can't contain it. Got to get this going.
Yeah. So primarily, this is going to be a dragon movie podcast.
Correct.
But there's this excellent show.
Yeah.
So far.
That's
currently airing. That seems like a good opportunity for us to sort of get our feet wet covering and then also stay current with something that's like getting released piece by piece, which is like much as we would like it, it's not like there are just dozens of dragon movies coming out every year, like current content for us to talk about.
And I think something that the House of the Dragon is going to really give it, like with what we've seen in House of the Dragon, it's going to give us an opportunity to break down everything we want to do with this podcast. We want to break down a story that has great characters, talk about how the characters are doing, talk about the plot, how the story is going. But we also obviously want to give credit where credit is due to the actual dragons. And I feel like there's a wide range of dragons within House of the Dragon. You have the massive dragons that have the capacity to just annihilate the entire continent. And you have the smaller dragons that are more focused on speed, that they can, and they have their benefits, and we can break down, okay, we want to give them an opportunity to really show off their prowess and break down what they bring to the table. And
yeah, and that's something worth underlining is that we are going to be talking about the films, the show, like just the content itself. And we do want to evaluate that with something of a critical eye just for what it is, like looking at the characters, the production value, the story, all of that. But since the focus of this show is on the dragons, we are going to make a point in zooming in on that aspect of everything that we cover. And we have some ideas and methods that we've discussed for how to do that, but I guess we'll leave the specifics of that until we actually get there.
Yeah. And as we go further along, we'll probably do a better job at just letting everyone know of what we'll be breaking down in case people want to be watching the films with us as we break it down. But as Austin mentioned, for the first 10 shows, we're going to be doing a breakdown of the House of the Dragon season 1. And then once August comes rolling around, we'll be breaking down season 2 of House of the Dragon. But in between, we'll be having several films that we either have a deep affinity to or are dreading, or just ones that we're going to be bringing in because I've looked at the list. We've got ourselves some content.
There are so many dragon movies. I know I already said that they're not, pumping them out, but we have compiled a initial list that is enough to keep this podcast going for years.
Yes.
Do not worry. I'm not going to publish the list. I don't want to show our hand too much there, but even discounting like the absolute trash, like the Asylum shit that, we're really not looking to touch unless we get super desperate, which again, looking at the list is not going to be anytime soon. I guess I'm making my point twice over there. There are a lot of these, and there's a lot more variety within these films than I initially expected when we first started talking about doing this as a pod.
And there's also a lot of films, like, as I mentioned before, for a 10 out of 10, it just needs to have a dragon in it. It doesn't have to be a living, breathing dragon. It can just be a symbol of a dragon. And there's plenty of films that have dragon symbolism in it that we have been compiling as well.
Oh, yes. I am very much looking forward to stretching our parameters. But, I do hope that we can, stay within dragon movies proper for at least a little while.
Oh,
here.
Of course. I'm just breaking down that we might be straying from the straight and narrow every once in a while to delve into the world of non-dragon.
We're just getting, I guess it's worth giving a little heads up there. But it is back to my main point there, maybe not necessary in that there are a lot of different types of dragon movies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what has attracted me to this as a podcast is that you have, for example, high quality children's content in the likes of a How to Train Your Dragon series.
Yeah.
While at the same time, there is massively popular, very adult content being produced about dragons in the likes of a Game of Thrones, for example. So both of those covering dragons, portraying the same creature, but in totally different methods.
Correct. And I know that there are some children films like How to Train Your Dragon that do actually, in my opinion, a very great job at how they portray their dragons. We'll obviously break that down once we get to those films. And I'm just excited to be able to see where we're able to take it and just what films we're able to break down. And obviously, we're also going to try to get involved with other films from other cultures, not just American films. Obviously, we've talked about some Japanese films, and I'm sure there's other films as well that have dragons that are.
Yeah, I mean, just based on this initial list that we have.
Oh,
films from all different. Well, not all countries, but a vast array of countries, cultures, languages, time periods.
Yeah,
we're gonna have some fun here.
Yeah. I think that's primarily what we're going to be doing with this podcast. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're just having fun.
No, see, I'm not looking at
This is a blood sport.
See, I thought we were in agreement on this, that we were going to take this dragon movie podcast very seriously.
Oh, we're going to take it seriously, but we're having fun with it, Austin.
Okay. I'm down to have a little fun too. The last thing I have in my notes here is just to make a point that we are allowing ourselves a little leeway and that we're willing to discuss all kinds of dragons.
Yeah.
Whether that's your drakes, your wyverns, your classic dragons, your hydras. This podcast will be covering them all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you just break down in the world, there's different dragons for different regions. And I mean, again, we could have a whole podcast just talking about that, but I'll save that for another day. But I feel like that you can be very, very loose with what you describe as a dragon in the sense of, is it a big flying lizard?
Okay, dinosaurs are not dragons.
Dinosaurs are not dragons.
We agree.
Dinosaurs
okay,
are not
I got
dragons.
it on mic.
We might watch a dinosaur movie. We might watch a dinosaur movie.
No, I think that is worth saying right here and now, because big flying lizards, obviously that means dragons, but I could very much see someone at this table 100 episodes in.
Pterodactyls are big flying lizards.
Here's the thing, though. If these Jurassic World films follow the right trajectory, there's a dragon in the next movie.
I'm honestly surprised there was not a dragon in Jurassic World 3. Like, with how they...
Which one are we on?
They released Jurassic World 3. We're on to Jurassic World 4, or the Fast and the Furious and Jurassic World, or whatever combo that they're just planning on doing there.
Well, if not this next one, then, sometime in the next 7, please. That's the only way we can hop on. Is there anything else that you had that we need to discuss?
No, I think we really broke it down, and I think that's really what we're doing here with the Big Flying Lizards Dragon Movie podcast.
Excellent. All right, I think we better cut ourselves off there.
All right.
Before this just goes on and on and on.
Austin, where can they find us?
Right. You can subscribe and follow this podcast on all major podcast platforms, be that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We will be on YouTube as well. And if not this episode, we will be doing a video version of the pod to go along with that. You can also follow us on most major social media platforms at BigLizPod. That's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube again. You can find us.
Big Liz Pod.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for following along with this fiery, scaly, ridiculous adventure that we are starting here today. And we will catch you next time.
Yeah. Excited, guys. Good night.